Welcome to another Wargame review from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander.
And I'm Grant.
And today we're taking a look at Downfall, Conquest of the Third Reich from GMT Games.
And in that subtitle, that's all you need to know.
Yes. This game tells you exactly what it is on the front cover. So this is a two-player kind of grand strategic European theater hex encounter World War II game. It is a very, well, it's a unique game in the way that it plays, and we'll talk about some of that here, but the design team was the late Chad Jensen. This was one of the last games that he was kind of really working on, and then that was kind of picked up and given to John Butterfield to kind of finish off and develop, and then this is the product that we have. So
Is Kai the developer on this?
yeah,
Okay.
I don't know that for a fact, but I know that she's done a lot
Sure.
of that kind of work with it. So Chad Jensen and John Butterfield teaming up for
That's
a game.
kind of a dream
I mean,
team.
you know it's going to be something.
Yeah. And it really is. I mean, spoiler alert, right?
Yeah.
This is a very good game.
So
And it's a game. I feel like it's a game. We talked
Yes,
about that over and
yes.
over again. It's a game, and I like that.
this was a 2023 release, and I think we're gonna. Who knows when you're watching this?
We're done.
But this is going to be the last of the 2023 that we played. This came out later in 23, and we desperately wanted to give it a shot before we kind of cut off 23 and start on 24 war games. And I was excited for it, but then like after this started hitting people's tables, I felt like the hype went through the roof. It was extremely well received. People were really like singing its praises. And I've actually played it twice now, because Ed, a friend of ours, came around and I played it with him for the first time, and he taught me how to play. Then we've just played it, and it really kind of lives up to that reputation that it had built, even though it's only been out for a few months.
Yeah.
I think the enjoyment that this game can provide is really, really, really high.
Well, and also, I think, once again, I want to reiterate, it really is a game.
Yes.
There's a lot of... All war games have dice rolling, but there's a lot of, there's card play, there's random events.
There's the action chip pool.
The chip pool is fantastic.
Yeah, there's a lot of game elements in this, and you kind of have to view this game very differently than you do some of the other war games out there, especially at this scale where it's like, oh, we're trying to like simulate World War II at this grand strategic level where we've got like, all our armies and supply and all these grander concerns, and maybe even a little bit of politics, which kind of shows up in a small way in this through events. You're looking at strategic concerns with the Battle of the Atlantic, if you're playing that, and the strategic bombing, all these very big concepts. But in this one, you have all of that, but many of those extra little systems are kind of simplified. And the crux of this game is that this is a race to carve up the corpse of Germany, basically, between the Soviets and the Western Allies. So, in this game, I will play as the Soviets, and I will control the Western Front Axis forces. And what that means is that I'm trying to race with my Soviets to Berlin, and I'm trying to use my Axis forces to stop you from getting to Berlin. And conversely, you as the Western Allies, you're controlling that, trying to punch your way, through France and into Berlin, but you're controlling the Eastern Front Axis forces, trying to stymie and slow the Soviets down. So you control that. That's technically not a unique thing. There's a couple other games out there that did it.
Yeah, there's something in the 80s that...
I think it was called Battle for Germany.
There you go.
Right. And I think there's another one. The Mighty Endeavor. If you have the expansion of that, there's a way to do that as well. But when I say it's something that's unique, what I mean by that is it's not the only game, but there's not a lot of games that do that. And it changes the kind of game that it is, right? This would be every other game, it's someone's the Axis, someone's the Allied forces, or it's a 3-player game in something like Triumph and Tragedy. In this one, the Axis forces, they exist, right?
Really just on paper, though.
Yeah.
There's not a lot to do with them other than just kind of fall
Yeah.
back and strategically move and then hit once in a while when you have the odds.
Yeah, it's a slowing force instead
Yeah.
of a stopping force necessarily.
I really like to look at it as I think about speed bumps, right? Speed bumps are placed in, say, a parking lot, and people race to the speed bump, and then you stop, and then you go over the speed bump. Then you race to the next speed
Yeah.
bump, and then, but that's kind of what it is here. It's like you're trying to stop somebody and then kind of fall back a little bit, so they have to slowly drive over you
Yeah.
again, and ultimately that is what you are doing. And although there are key moments where if somebody makes a bad move, I made a couple bad moves tonight,
And that's something that's very easy to do in this game. as
allowed
well.
you to really open up a really good and positive counterattack. I would have done things differently now that we've played.
You can bring a lot of learned knowledge to this game.
Ironically, even though I made those couple of mistakes, I think I'm winning the game as the Russians.
I was not doing great on the West Front.
Well, that was one thing I was confused by. It's just very difficult over there. I know I got a unit in there quickly.
Yeah, and I kind of like fumbled my roll.
You rolled like a 2
and
or a
did not
3.
get the progress I needed to
Yeah.
get through there. But you know, that's just it. It's a game though.
Yeah.
Like there are other this takes a long time to play, and it does, but it takes itself the perfect level of serious that it's supposed to. Like I think about some other games out there where it's like, ooh, this is really serious, like very deep simulation, and the accuracy is the most important part of this.
Yeah.
This game is a game. Like you have to view it almost as a race. Like it is more important to keep moving and make forward progress than it is to eliminate every single unit.
Yep.
And that conversely, for your Axis forces on the other side of the map, if you get them all eliminated because you're trying to do this like, ooh, no retreat, you'll lose.
Oh, yeah.
Because if your armies
doubt.
get eviscerated, there's nothing stopping the opponent from just driving straight down Europe. So it teaches you have to retreat. You cannot do, no step back type policies unless it's like the most key little situation. You can't do it across the whole front. If everyone dies, you're in trouble. And you've got the random elements with the action cards, some dice, the action chits, and it really sits in a great space where it's like a fun, playable game.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's resonated with so many people in the way that it has, because it's fun.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned it, that paradigm shift that you've got to do. And it's funny because we talked about that for the first turn and a half. And I kept saying to myself, Grant, you're trying to kind of keep all the lines moving, when the reality is I had busted kind of a weak little area here, and I should have really exploited that.
Yeah, like pour the units through.
Yeah.
Because the Axis forces have to retreat.
Yeah.
Because if they all get cut off and die and get
They're done.
isolated, the game's over. You've lost the game. And so, which is a little bit different to a lot of other war games where it's like, cool, you bust on through, and I've got enough units to kind of seal you off, and now you're out of supply.
Yeah.
There's 10 Axis units on the East Front.
There's a couple more than that, but not many more.
But not many. Like you
Yeah.
don't. It's not a game where you have the volume of forces to be able to do that kind of thing. It's a game of fall back slowly enough.
Yeah.
It's faster than the other side.
But on the offensive, it's about when you get the good advantages, for instance, when you have air superiority because you have 1 or 2 and you have a bunch of the elite units out, the starred units, that's where you want to hit it, because you only get 4 or 5 chits that have attacks on them.
Yeah.
And you've really got to make them count. So it's a matter of kind of up and down the front, understanding what the situation is and then going for it. And actually, you did the same thing down in Italy.
Yeah.
You were busting, the Axis got kind of destroyed down there, and I found myself really trying to fall back to the Alps and make a line.
Use the terrain, what terrain there is in this game, to your benefit.
And the other concept I really enjoyed about the combat and the lines was the supporting element, right? So you identify a lead attack unit, it usually has 3 or 4 power.
Yeah,
right?
It steps and pips like a block, but they're chits in this one.
Yeah, very cool. But then every unit that you have around the area, not in the unit, the hex you're attacking from, gives a support of +1.
Yeah, you get the flanking bonuses.
So lining those up and trying to maximize that is very fun. It feels very puzzle-like and very maneuver-oriented.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that aspect of it a lot. You can see here the static lines right in, that's not going anywhere.
Yeah, and where the terrain is a big defensive boon, you're like, cool. It slows it down as well.
But it's about, once again, identifying those areas, identifying those opportunities, playing your cards well, sometimes holding your cards together so that you have a couple of good cards to play. I had that one card that allowed me to re-roll, and it ultimately didn't help me, but that's okay.
Well, the other aspect is, like you said, it's a game of like exploitation and movement. Well, you're also at the mercy of the action chits that are drawn from
100%.
And it's one of those elements where you kind of, again, it's that paradigm shift. It's a game. Like, sometimes you have real bad options. And so, like, you're released from that mantle of taking it as seriously as you do something like unconditional surrender.
Yeah.
Where, like, I've only got bad options. That's not great. But you might then say, cool, I'm going to keep this attack chit and I'm going to save it in my planning to help cycle those ones. Now I've got to move. I can then move my units up, and then I know I'm guaranteed to have an attack I can follow up with, or vice versa. Things like that.
Well, they also had for the Soviets, the Stavka chit, and then the OKW and the OKH chits as well.
Yeah.
Those kind of act as anything, so it's important to
they're a wild.
Utilize those when you've just got to plan it out, and I liked that. I liked having to think about the options that were before me. It reminded me of a card-driven game.
Yeah.
You have a hand of 6 or 7 cards, and you just got to make the best out of it. I've got to figure out how to manipulate those activation chits to get on the board what I need to get on the board.
You know what it kind of reminded me of? This is very random. It reminds me of 2 games. One of them is Zermatt.
Yes.
And the other one is Conan.
Okay, yeah, sure.
It's that river concept where
Mm-hmm.
the action chits are in a line. The first one on the line, great, you're going to pay whatever initiative value.
Straight up, you pay the value on the chart.
But the further down the line you go, because I want to pick this one, if I'm skipping over my other chits that are in front of it, it's more expensive on the initiative track. So I always like that when you have when you can or you have to pay a little bit more to get what you want within the options that are available.
Well, it's that risk reward type thing, and it's also very cool if you look on the turn track, if you could see the close up, the chits are spaced apart, and so for instance, the Soviets here, well, Western allies are what, 6 or 7 behind the Soviets?
Yeah.
Some of those chits, you can take the action and you're going to be able to go again. Because you're only going to spend 4 or 5 initiative. So you know what? It's time to get a double turn. I'm going to pick one of the lower move chits.
Little move.
Move my guys up into position. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to pick a big one, the 4 attack unit. And then I'd move my guys in and I'm going to attack you. I really enjoyed that.
Yes.
Trying to understand how am I going to maximize my opportunity here. Maximize my opportunity with my limited hand of cards.
Yeah.
And really, I think the best part of this game is that initiative, the way the initiative system works. And although there were times I thought to myself, I wish it was a little more punitive. Because sometimes I made choices and I'm like, it didn't really matter.
So, yeah, my one issue with the game, and I think you would agree with this, was there were times where it was, especially as the Axis, where you're like, it doesn't matter what I'm doing because I've built a decent defensive line and I'm just going to stand pat.
Yeah.
So I'm going to choose a crappy chit that's only moves and fights. I'm not actually going to do anything with them. I wish there was some way that you could cash those in
to maybe do I don't know what, but I was thinking the same thing. It'd be nice if I had that opportunity, a chit that I really can't use, burning it to get some simple benefit.
Yeah,
it would have just added another layer to the game.
Yeah, maybe if I have like 2 in a row that I don't want to do, I can cash them in for like a reinforcement or something.
How many times did I have like over here on the Western Front? There were several times I'm like, I'll just take that chit, put it on, and I'm not going to do anything.
And the East Front Axis did that at least 3 or 4
Yep.
times. And so there were some lulls like that, which was fine. It didn't feel very satisfying.
Yeah.
But for the Soviets, I imagine when I played them at least before, and for the Western forces, my turns were almost always much more meaningful.
Yeah.
Which that's kind of a function of the game. But I wish there was like one extra little thing that maybe the Axis could do.
Right. Just another option.
To
something
solve
to think about.
That problem.
Yeah. There were just many, many times. I think with the Western Axis or powers, I think 2 or 3 times in a row I didn't do anything with my chit. And that doesn't always feel good.
No, it feels a bit kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
Like if you're doing a good job holding someone off with a defensive position,
You kind of get punished.
I should be rewarded for this
Yeah.
because I'm doing a good job.
One of the things I really like about the game, and I think that John and Chad did a really good job, there's a lot of asymmetry between
Oh gosh, yes.
the Western Allies and the Soviets. Extremely different makeup of units, different abilities, even different number of chits. Didn't we decide that the Western Allies had 15
Yes.
chits? The Soviets only have 12, I think it was.
But yeah, those extra 3 are strategic warfare ones, which they're
Sure.
not involved in. And the strategic warfare is like a whole thing that the Allies are worried about.
Kind of a game within a game.
Don't got to worry about.
Well, and I dabbled in that a little bit because I didn't want you to get...
Yeah, the Axis worry about it, but the Soviets,
Right.
no interest in
Yeah,
that.
that's true. That's true. I dabbled in it with my Axis. But I enjoyed that. I thought the unit makeup and the fighting and the values, even the CRT, was very, very different.
Yeah, the CRT had Soviet-specific results.
Yep, it did. And
had
German.
and some Germans.
Yeah. For instance, an S, and it actually was fairly...
Yeah,
often.
There's a streak through the
Yeah.
table.
It says 1 hit against Soviet attacker, no matter what.
Yeah, they just take more losses.
And, that's cool. They're not necessarily as good or as well trained. And then the G on turns 1 to 6 reduce defender hits by 1 if the defenders are all German.
Yeah.
And that, like you said, it's sprinkled throughout that CRT. I thought that was really fascinating.
But eventually, as the German army melts away, that goes away.
Well, sure.
They just die better.
Yeah.
And, then you get into also, like, the combat modifiers and the combat strength modifiers and the dial modifiers. There's a lot of faction-specific ones for those as well. And then there's also subsets of faction-specific ones within different weather types as well.
Oh, yeah. Weather was a huge factor in this game.
Yes.
And as it should be.
Yeah, when you get to the mud, it's like, oh, well,
You can't attack.
everyone pause, we're not doing
Yeah,
anything now.
You're just kind of moving around, getting into position. I mean, you can do an attack, but you better have a good action card that somehow makes your attack better.
But you're just not doing that. You're because
you might just wait it
the
out.
snow is less punitive.
Yeah, but it's
where
still
I
bad.
can make it up easier with the cards than I can with the mud.
Yeah.
So it's there's interesting ebbs and flows to the game as well.
And ultimately what you're trying to do is there are red hexes all sprinkled all throughout the board. And I'm, as the Soviets, trying to control as many of those as I possibly can.
Specifically, more than me.
Yeah, specifically more than you. And it's kind of cool. So you can kind of see, okay, I want to go here, 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 and here. I'm going to try to capture these 4 over these 3 or 4 turns. And you're kind of doing the same thing. Ultimately, I think my Soviets did they got 1 extra place.
And then
what did I get?
You had some UN points because you had more partisans on the board.
Yeah,
as
which was
well.
interesting. And partisans I thought were a little disappointing. And maybe we just need to learn the nuance of them.
Yeah,
They just don't really do as much as I thought they would do.
They're really, to me, they're for scoring those UN points. And then you can win those auto victories if you've got 10 objectives, including and then a certain number of those on the board.
It's just a different way to end the game.
Yeah.
A long game, though.
Yes, that's one thing to say. This is not a short game by any stretch of the imagination.
We basically played 3 full turns, and it took 7 hours.
Yeah. And that was our first game.
Yep,
It's
first
slow
game.
going into, but
It didn't feel like 7 hours, but
No.
there's a lot of chits. There's probably 45 chits that you're going to go through every single turn.
yeah, and it's
Just takes time.
it's also hard to speed it up.
Yeah,
Like there's only so fast you can go.
yeah.
So yeah,
And there's nothing wrong with that. This is one of those games that you're going to want to set up,
yeah.
play it over, say, a 2 or 3 day period, 5 to 6 hours a day, and you'll wrap it up.
I think this is going to become, for a lot of people, like a convention staple. And I've already heard that, every convention that's been released, there's at least a couple tables of it out. It's that kind of a game, right? You sit around, you're going to play it for ages, for 3 or 4 days. You're going to have had a great time start to finish.
I enjoyed the heck out of this game.
What I'll do is I'll show you just a little bit how some of it works, at least. And then we'll wrap up with a few final thoughts. So here's a look at the map for Downfall. It's a big 2-mapper. It does take up a good amount of space, but kind of like I mentioned earlier, you've got these really good dual-sided play aid card that you'll have, and then each player will have kind of a menu or like a shorthand of all the action orders that everyone else can do. And pretty much that's everything that the game is. You'll have, I think, 2 or 3 little small decks of cards. And I just point that out because, yes, this is a big and long game, but so many of these these bigger games have extra, like, counter sleds and off-map holding sheets or air displays or, like, economy displays and stuff. They did a really good job of putting all of that stuff on the maps and around the edges, where it really is only these 2 little maps and then what space you need for like rolling some dice and having a couple decks of cards which can kind of squeeze along, one of the sides of it, like we've got up in the corner here. So yes, it's big, but it's not as big as some of the other kind of crazier games out there. So that's something just to bear in mind. But you can kind of see from the map itself, it is pretty large size hexes. I think these might be 1-inch hexes. And then the pieces fit real nicely inside of them. They're slightly larger. These are kind of your little normal or smaller size counters we got here. We got the larger playing pieces. Again, they're pre-rounded, which was really nice. But, for the whole of Europe, Spain is impossible. Most of Sweden is impossible. Turkey, right? It really is it's just this little section of the board. And, France is what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and anywhere from like 6 to 7 hexes wide. Like just to give you an idea of the scale of the game and how much you're trying to do in it, right? And with a Downfall scenario, which we played here, it's Rome has already fallen and Italy surrendered, and so it's just pushing up, through the Gothic line, I think it was. And then trying to come up into southern Germany, or to kind of come through the French Alps and link up with the Allied forces landing in France, right? You're trying to do the Normandy landings, punch through these, circle round, and then go through the Low Countries. Same thing with the Russians. They all kind of start over here, and it's move this line down, swing everyone down, round, and through to pick up all these communist countries. Well, pick up these countries that you'll turn into communist satellites for the USSR, and then push into Berlin. So, like, it really is this closing of these kind of 2 fronts, but Italy has like 2 or 3 pieces only of Axis units there. The East Front has like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 German units, and a smattering of Axis miners. Like, it's not a game of massive amounts of counters. The Germans will fold. It's how quickly can you get them to fold before your opponent gets them to fold. That's the crux of this game, which is really, really fun. So the main core engine of the game is on these order kind of sheets and tokens. So what we have is we have a cup, and in this cup is matching symbols for all of those orders on that menu, for all the different factions. And so we've got 4 factions. You've got the Russians, you got the Western Allies, and you have the Western Axis forces, and then the Eastern Axis forces. Those are 2 separate factions. I, as the Western Allies, control these, and I control these Eastern Axis forces. the Russians have their Russian forces, and they control the Western Axis forces. So you're trying to make progress yourself, and then with your Axis forces, stymie their progress, right, and vice versa. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw these chits out, and they go into this little queue down here, and then whoever's turn it is to choose is going to pick one of these corresponding actions to perform. Now, how do you decide who goes first? I think at the very, very top of the screen, hopefully you can see this, there's this initiative track that goes around the edge of the board, goes all the way down here, goes to 91. And so there is a faction marker for everyone and a weather marker as well. Whoever's lowest on the initiative order is the one doing the choosing. So this is currently a Western Allies turn. They're going to look at this menu of things that they can do. They only have one option, so they're going to do this. They're going to choose this, and they're going to execute that action. And you know, that's why we have this little menu for a little bit of a quick reference if you need it. But once you've done 2 chits, you figure out the parlance. So with this, we are going to move 3 spaces with, and then perform 2 attacks with all of our motorized units, all of our airborne units, and all of our armor or mechanized units. So what does that look like? So I'm going to move or expend 3 movement points with all of my motorized units. So here I have some motorized infantry, for example. And all of my armor units. Here I've got 4 steps of British armor. And then if I had any airborne units, I got 1st Airborne. For the British, we use the US ones, and they're in the holding box off map. So I'm going to spend 3 movement points with each of those guys. Movement points are really, you know, it's, if you're moving down the train tracks, 1, 2, 3, it's really that simple. Moving through different terrains, depending on the weather, will be much more difficult. I might want to move one of these idiots out of a mulberry and then move a different one in, because I can only do an attack that leads with one of these. So if I had 2 pure infantry units in here, so let's say I had this French detachment of infantry only, and let's flip these Canadians over. Let's say I had this 1st Canadian Regiment, I believe it is, could be an army. If I had only infantry units, based on this action chit, I can't perform an attack with them because the lead unit has to be one of these symbols, and in this stack I don't have any of those. So this is where I might move one of these guys out, and I might slide, you know, then I might drive, if I didn't have them already in, one of these armor units. So then the armor unit, or the mechanized infantry in this instance, can lead the attack, and those infantry can support it as needs be. So what chits you get, really, really important. Once I've done all my turns and I've done my moves and attacks, we're going to refill this little chit track here. Gosh, we have any Western ones. And this is going to go onto my, let's see, I don't know if I can see that in the shot. There is a little, right down here in this corner, there's a little holding box where that's going to go. And also it's printed on my menu here. Oh, did I do the right one? No, it's this one here. Because I executed that order, I'm going to go up 9 spaces on the initiative track. So if I go up on the initiative track 9 spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now we're going to do a weather turn, we're going to do a Western Axis turn, then a Soviet turn, then I'm going to get a go again. And all of that's going to happen before we get to the Eastern Axis forces, because the Eastern Axis forces had spent a lot of initiative on one of their big, very expensive, slow things that kind of push them back, so they can't do a lot of actions. So then, let's say when we roll weather, you just roll 2d6, and you go up that many spaces on the track. So I'm going to go up 6 spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's going to go underneath here, so the Soviets will go. And that's really how the weather works. The weather is really simple. It's divided up into these weather periods. So as long as that weather chit is in this period, in this turn, it is fair. If it gets to the second period, then it's going to remain fair. Now, for some of the periods, you know, it's fair, fair, mud for that last section, or it's snow, 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 because it's a winter section, or it's fair, mud, fair. So those change depending on the turn and where the weather marker is. The weather marker is if it goes all the way around the track, then it moves to a different turn, basically. So now we go to kind of the Western Axis forces. They're going to look at this menu. Great. They also only have one option. That's real boring. So we're going to skip over that and pretend that they did some stuff. Now we get to the interesting stuff where we're like, where it's the Soviets. Let's say we're doing the Russians here. So the Russians have 3 options on this track. They can do any one of them. However, the further down this track you go, you're going to pay a 1 initiative penalty for every one of your orders you skip over. So if I do want to do this, normally that particular one is going to cost me 7 initiative, but because I'm skipping over 2 of my chits to get to it, it's going to cost me 9. So that's something just to bear in mind. If there's something you desperately want to do, you might take a penalty, and that's important because, you know, if I can get away with 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I'll get to go again before the Axis forces can react. So you get a double turn over the Axis forces that you're facing. But if I really wanted to do that one, I'm going to do 9. I'm now going to go after them, which isn't good, because now I can't get that little double turn in. So you might do something that maybe is less good, so that you can get a little extra action on top of someone, really exploit that. That's when you get into effectively that kind of blitzkrieg kind of stuff, where you're doing a lot before the enemy can really react and kind of get a defensive grip. To do combat, which is really the last thing that we'll look at, there's a lot of different details in this. Combat's really not very complicated, something I actually really appreciated in this, because it meant that you were just playing the game and you weren't getting super mega bogged down in stuff. So let's just look at a combat here. We'll just kind of set one up. Let's do this. Let's do Italy. Great. We're already here. So let's say, oh gosh, we shouldn't do this, but we're going to do it anyway. There's a reason that this was not attacked. So let's say we had a Western Allies order and we're going to do an attack, and the attack was with an armored unit. So we'll kind of use that one chit that we were doing. We're going to do one of our 2 attacks that we have is going to be led by some armor units. Great. We have all armor units here, so we're going to be good to go. So the little play aid here is really, really, really good. Goes through the land combat procedure, but then it also has all the different strengths and modifiers here for us to pay attention to. First thing we're really going to do is, you can kind of preliminarily add up these initial strengths, but you also want to consult your hand of cards. I feel like in this game the Western Allies are going to have a good amount of cards because they kind of need them to supplement. Axis cards are kind of harder to come by, and they usually, I don't know, I felt like they were like not that great. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to optionally play HQ cards. So an HQ card has this little HQ symbol on it, and when we play it, we're going to get 1 strength point with this symbol, and we're going to get 1 + 1 on the die roll, or -1 if we're defending. But it's the attacker's option first. The attacker doesn't have any HQ cards, so they're going to decline. And then let's say they're going to do it. Let's say the Germans are going to do it. They can say, yeah, go for it. We'll play this. Because we're an OKW unit, which is Oberkommando West, I believe, we get this one and this one. If this was if we were the Eastern Axis forces, we'd just get the +1. We wouldn't get the extra strength. So we'll play this for the bonus. Great. Then we go to combat cards, and combat cards will literally say combat on them, and they'll have this little symbol as well. And again, you're going to get modifiers off of them and things like that. So let's say we're going to play Patton, attacking with an American armored unit. We have an American armored unit. We'll play that. So that's going to give us +2 on our die roll. And we'll say we're not going to double up. You can play any number of those combat cards. You can only play one HQ card, but you can play any number of combat cards. So I could toss in, you know, this one as well and get +4 on the dice. Maybe I will, just so that we can see that, because I know we're assaulting a fortress and it's going to be real bad. So let's just do... And then the Axis player has the option to respond with any combat cards that they might have. They don't have any. So what we're going to do is we're going to add up our strength points, and then the strength points are going to inform which column on the table we're going to roll on. Then we're going to calculate our modifiers. And we do have a combat column and die roll modifiers track here. We did not use it because I've played this game a couple times, and so I kind of have that down pat. But it is something that's a very helpful mnemonic if you, especially as you're starting off. And there's these little chits that you can put out to tell you which column you're rolling on. So the first thing that we'll do is we'll calculate our strength points. And your attacker and your defender strength points are calculated differently. So let's go through that. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to pick our lead attacking unit. And we're attacking with this American armored unit. That's what we're doing. And so we have 4 strength points. So currently we have 4 strength points. Because we have some flanking units, which are units that are supporting us, that are not in the same hex, they're in adjacent hexes, we're going to get +1 for each one of those units. So we've got 1, 2, 3, so we go from 4 to 7, great. Then we're going to add to that, because we are in fair weather, because of the time of year and because of the turn that we're in, we have +1 per non-German armored unit in fair. So 1, 2, 3, 4, because we're all armored units, because we have all our armor here for some reason. So we're actually going to get another 4, which is very, very good. So now we're currently at 11. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Great. Now I don't really have a... So we're at 11. Here, let me mark that on some dice here, just so that I remember. Then we're going to look at elite badges. So elite badges are these little yellow stars. The Germans have none, but the Allied forces have 1, which comes from their elite air. And if you have air support in a region, that counts for every attack you're doing within its 5 hex radius for the elite ones. And so it lends that elite badge to it as well. A lot of units do have an elite badge printed on it, but none of our ones do. But we have 1 elite from that, and because we have more elites than they do, we get another point from that, so we're going to go up to a 12. And then we are going to get another +1 because we have any amount of like Western combat forces. And basically that is just a penalty for the Russians. They don't get the additional +1 because that's the design I wanted to penalize them. So we have a total of 13 strength points for the Allied forces. Now we're going to subtract from that the German strength points. Now what we talked about is when you attack, you've got the strength of your lead unit and then +1 for all the supporting. For the defenders, you calculate all the number of pips. So if you can basically have 6 pips in a space. So we have 6, which is nice. So we're going to get rid of 6 points there. Then we are going to have, we don't have any elite badges here, so a bully for them. But the German strength is going to be +1 for having any amount of German combat units. Again, that's a penalty for like the Russians or for the Axis miners. They just aren't as good. So we'll get another one of those there. Now we're going to look at kind of terrain. So we are defending in a hill. So a hill is +2. So we're going to go from a 6 down to a 4. And that's where the modifiers end. So this is actually a really good attack for us. Is the Japs. Oh, and we had +1 from this. I had forgotten about that. So we're down to a 3. So we are going to be rolling on the +3 column, which we'll mark that to remember because we're about to do a bit more maths. Again, I know that's a lot to go through the first time, but you will figure that out real quick. And it's like, my strength, am I a +1 for being Western? Any bonuses for armor? What's the terrain? It really is that simple. You get that down pat very quickly. So now we're going to calculate our combat modifiers. So the first modifier we're going to check is our basically our cards. So currently we're at -1 for this, but we're at +4, so it's +2 for fair. So we're at a +3 total. Great. So we're rolling a +3 on the +2 column. We're going to be -2 because of this fortress. 1, 2. However, we're going to be +2 because we have air superiority. 1, 2. And we have air superiority in fair, so it's 2. If it's air superiority in snow, it's only +1. And that's basically all of the modifiers. So what we're going to do now is we're going to roll 2d6 on the +3 column, and we're going to add +3 as a DRM as well. So we are American forces, so we're going to use our American dice. You don't get these in the game. This is just for us because we're cool. So I supplement these. These are from Flames of War. No, these are from... excuse me. These are from Battlefront. No, that's not true. Sorry, Battlefront is Flames of War. These are from Warlord Games from their Bolt Action line. There you go. So we're going to roll 2d6, and I rolled a 4, which is pretty pathetic. We're going to add to that 3, though, so we're going to get to a total of 7. And we're going to look up a 7 on the +3 column. Attacker's going to lose 1, defender's going to lose 2. It's really that simple. So the attacker has to, if the attacking lead unit is an armor unit, they have to take that step loss on the armored unit, and it removes the armor from it. So instead of, so this is a game of, it's almost like a block war game with the pips like that, strength points, 2, 3, 4. In this instance, instead of taking a reduction, we have to flip from armored to non-armored. And we keep our strength points. So we've got 4 here, and we're going to flip to 4 infantry steps. Our tanks got destroyed, but our men did not. So that's our 1 allied step loss. And you're like, oh, that's not very punitive. Well, it is, because now, you know, I can't use a card like this for American armored units, because that's not an American armored unit. This is a French one, so it hurts me there. It hurts me on my activations, right? So I couldn't lead an attack with that unit because this one wouldn't have allowed it. So losing armor can be very punitive. You know, you get armor bonuses for fair and strength points like that. So I know that doesn't seem like a lot, but that can hurt you at a very inopportune time. And the German player has to take their first loss on a fortress if they have one as the defender. So they do, they're going to flip over. Again, they're going to retain their strength points, but they just become a little infantry unit, and then they have to bop another one because you have to spread out your hits as evenly as possible. Now, you always have the option to take half your losses and convert those to retreats, and it is half rounded up. So if you have 1 loss, you can just move back and not take a step loss. If you have 3 losses, you can take 1 step and move back 2 spaces, which can make a really big difference. In this instance, if we move back, we're going to end up in this clear terrain. It's going to be real bad. So we're going to sit here and we'll take a loss and try to defend 1 more time in that hill because we've got good terrain there. And after that, we'll try to bug out, basically. But that's it. That's a combat. And the reality is on your chit, you're going to do 2 combats. So even your first turns where you'll take a little bit more time doing those calculations, you're going to do 2 combats. I think the largest chit has 4 combats on it, and it's a Russian one. So it's going to happen once per 91 initiative points, right? So the game moves along, it moves along, it moves along. As you do more combats, that process becomes a lot quicker, and this game has a really good pace to it, even though it is a longer game. That's kind of the gist of everything here. There's event cards and a special river and how those work, which is neat, but a little clunky at times. You're going to flow through all of these. You're going to race up and down that initiative track. But generally that's the kind of core of moving and fighting. There's ancillary chrome, like your strategic bombing tracks, but it's just a die roll, and do you move up or down on it? It's going to affect how many elite planes the US player has, basically. But that's how the game works. What we'll do is I'll wrap up here with a few final thoughts. So that was a look at the map. The game looks great on the table. It is a big two-mapper. But what I actually really liked about this is there's not a whole lot of off-map stuff.
No.
Like, there's some play cards, and you got the little decks of cards. But a lot of these big grand strategic games, I set up my 2 maps, and then I've got like 16 extra like sleds and sheets of paper and stuff.
Sure.
I felt like this was for
Kinda
a big
condensed.
game a bit more manageable like that.
Yeah.
They keep a lot of it on the maps, which I appreciate as well.
Production-wise, I think the colors really stand out. I think it's very easy for me to see what is what.
Yeah.
Even the use of light gray for the OKH and dark gray for the OKW, I thought was a nice touch. I didn't have a problem with that. Some of the minors are very close to each other, but I didn't really find that as an issue. I thought the terrain was very clear. Some of these lines get a little bit confusing for the country lines of demarcation.
Yeah, when you have all of these dudes on the east front, and then you got the names of the individual countries and where the borders of the countries are, and not particularly clearly delineated, but it's just hard to see, which is important for like partisan placement or your combat cards that say if there's a partisan in the country,
You get
okay,
a +1 in that area. Is
where's
it in that area?
Border?
Yeah.
Where does it end? And some of it's kind of funky.
Yep.
That was a struggle I had with Ed as well, where we're like, ugh.
Where is that? I really liked the play aids.
Player aid
Very
was very
good.
good.
The setup cards were fantastic.
Yes, it was very easy to set everything up.
Yep.
There were some weird things in the Overlord scenario, though. In the setup, it tells you to put a couple cards in the event deck.
Yeah, that was
specifically Italy surrendering, and then like stuff about the fleets moving out.
Yeah.
But you also, it tells you to set up the fleets already out, and Italy has
Yeah.
already surrendered.
It's
So there's a
weird.
couple weird cards that they're like, I'm pretty sure these aren't supposed to be in here.
Right.
But the setup explicitly tells you to put
Yeah.
them in, which I'm like, yeah.
And it's probably less about the event text and more about the icons on the cards.
Potentially.
But I don't remember what those icons
But it's
were.
like, do this thing, and then like, remove this card.
Yeah. And then there was one errata that came in on the
little
one
piece of
card.
paper. On event card E10, which we pulled.
Yeah.
And I was like, halfway, and I was confused. And I was
Yeah, I
like,
remember you
what
read it
the
and I'm like,
hell?
wait.
And then I was like, oh yeah, it's the one piece of errata
Yeah.
in this big old game.
So rather than
yeah.
OKH, it's supposed to be OKW.
Yes.
On that event. And that made a huge difference. Because I remember when you read it, I was like,
I'm like, why?
how's that possible?
Why am I rolling dice against myself?
Yeah, right. It was weird.
Yeah,
So,
you're not supposed to.
love the player aids. I love the pre-rounded counters.
Yep.
At least the units were pre-rounded. All of the minor admin counters we're going to have to clip.
Yeah.
But I liked the lower counter density.
We use cool dice, but the game comes with actually some
They're
really
actually
nice
pretty
dice
nice
as well.
Yeah, we used our specific snobby custom World War II dice.
Yeah, I like games at this scale with this amount of counters. Because it's like, the entirety of the East Front for the Soviets has about 20, 25 counters.
Yep.
You're going to stack 1 or 2, but you're limited by how many steps you can actually have within that stack.
Right.
And it's really clean, and there's not like all these weird exceptions and stuff
Yeah.
at this scale.
I will say this. I had a lot of problems making sure my stacks were not overstacked. Because it was specifically not units, it was steps of units.
Yeah, you can have 2 units
And I'm gonna
with a maximum of 6 total steps.
I'm gonna tell you this. I think a couple times my stuff was overstacked.
You know what? It happens.
At least once or twice. I remember seeing it and I'm like, oh crap. So I kind of screwed that up.
Yeah, it's fine.
But that's why I won.
Learning game.
Yeah, but that was a little hard for me. But overall, I had a great time with this. I love grand strategic games. I love war games that use cards, and especially like this, combat cards and special events, I thought was really great. And I think the unique approach to this, the situation was just really cool and well done. It just was fun.
And like we'd kind of talked about earlier, this box never forgets that it is a game.
Yes.
It is just... you're thinking about things a little bit differently, and you're just like, Go, go, go.
They just have a good time. It's just a good time.
And most of the time, I felt like the pace of while you're like pushing forwards.
Yeah.
And there's that bit of that movement pressure was really fun.
Yes.
It was just enjoyable to play.
I would agree with
And I
that.
think a lot of people are going to have a good time with this if this is,
Mm-hmm.
if you can dedicate the time to it.
Well, I would like to play this again, and I would like to do the entire shebang-a-bang,
Yes.
right? Because we didn't do North Africa. We didn't do any of that stuff. I would like to experience that.
Yes, I
Only
agree.
because it looks cool.
Shipping is much more important. Italy's a full-fledged faction
Yep.
with a lot of pieces, and then you've got like the Atlantic and the
Battle,
Siege of
yep.
Malta going on. It's
Oh, yeah.
a little bit more stuff to get involved in.
Yeah.
But even if you just buy this, or like you have a friend and you're doing this Overlord scenario, which cuts out all of the extra chrome stuff.
It basically goes to 1943, right?
Yeah, I think it starts in 44, in June 44,
Okay.
and then goes to the end of the war. Even if you only did that, you're still going to have a good time, I think. It's still
yeah.
fun. But yeah, there's still lots more to explore for us in this as well.
The other thing I would say is I'm not sure the amphibious points or the shipping or what are they called?
Yeah, the shipping point, transport points.
Very punitive, very hard to get, very hard to accumulate.
Yeah, you spend the whole game accumulating enough to then launch Normandy.
Like
And then getting more
you
to
only
like
have one
back those up or expand that
Yeah,
was
it's just
really
really
difficult.
hard. And that's why there's a lot of asymmetry to it.
Oh yeah.
They have really hampered the Soviets to try to slow them down because that's really challenging. It really is challenging.
Yeah, or I think the Western allies have easier access to action.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. No
and I
doubt.
also think they have much easier access to air force as well.
And I'm okay with that. You just need to understand that.
Yeah,
I got a little frustrated in the early game. It was like, you had like 7 cards and I had 2.
yeah.
But that's just the way it is.
Yeah, I
So-
did think this little kind of event river was
Was neat.
interesting and a cute way to do it. It was a little bit admin heavy.
Sure. Because you got to remember those events as they move down because they really don't go off till they get there in the middle.
Like you reveal the card and this is the pending one, but you also do look at the icons
And
on
you
it,
get
but
some of
not
the benefits.
text.
Yeah.
But
Very interesting.
But some of it, if you do pay attention to some of the text where it says, if it's
Yeah.
revealed in turn 7, get rid of it. Like, okay, well,
Yeah.
so it works well enough.
Sure. One more comment I want to make about this. Actually, 2 more comments. I think unconditional surrender and this share a lot of at least feeling
I agree
in the
with
game.
that. Yeah.
And so if you like unconditional surrender, I think this is really up your alley.
Yeah, this is less sandboxy, and you don't have the politics in it,
Yes.
or the diplomacy. But yeah, it's this one is much more just the combat.
Sure. That's a lot about what it is about.
Yeah.
My second comment is, I'm at, do you think this is going to be in your top 10 war games?
Yes.
I do too.
Without question.
Yeah.
Like it's.
I'm trying to now jockey some of my other ones and move them around.
See, I had already played this, so I wrote my list, and I know
okay.
where it is. And this
It's
is
very
this
good.
is second play has confirmed that for me.
Yeah, it's very good.
Because even though I did horrendously,
Sure.
I still really enjoyed it, and playing that Western faction versus the Soviets. I've done both sides now, and
Yeah.
it's great. It's really, really cool.
Yeah. Very, very good game. Very, very well done.
So yes, downfall from GMT. You got to check this out.
Oh,
honestly, you really kind of
definitely.
do. It's a 2-map. It's a little bit.
It's a big game.
It's a long
Yep.
game, but if carve out some time, check it out if you're interested.
It's very rewarding.
I think so. Yeah.
You're going to get out of it what you put into it. When you play a 12 to 15 hour game, you're going to really enjoy it and have a good time.
And I'm gonna be honest, the rules
Fairly easy.
were not. Yeah, they're not crazy complex.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was pretty understandable. And the other thing I was going to say is that it's not. It's
It's
just,
very late.
yes, but yes, it's just not. It's not a slog. I think some of these big strategic war games, it's like moving at a glacial pace.
But it is
Or-
moving at a glacial pace. But it's not a slog.
But this one, I don't. It doesn't feel
Yeah.
mentally like it's.
No, I
moving at a
agree with
glacial
you,
pace.
yeah.
I feel like it's like, well, go, 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 go. Even if I'm moving only 2 or 3 hexes, that
Yeah.
that angst and the pressure to keep it moving forward makes the game feel fast-paced,
Yeah.
even though we've only moved about 20 hexes.
And I would say it's relative.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of other games, you might move 3 or 4 hexes pretty quickly. Here, sometimes I felt like, ooh, I gained a whole hex that time. Yeah. That was awesome. But that was the pace of the game.
Yeah, it's the fits and bursts
Yeah.
when things happen. But boy, it just... there was never a time where I really felt that this was like bogged down, and I was like, ugh. Like in
the only time was when I had 3 or 4 chits that I really couldn't use, but that was really with the OKW and not my Soviets, and that's okay.
Yeah, even then, that's like I didn't do anything, and we just move on.
Yeah,
at least it didn't slow the game down in like a this is boring, and I won't do anything. It was just like, oh. That kind of sucked. We did nothing.
I don't know if you can tell we really like this game, so I could talk about it for hours.
Yes. Downfall from GMT. Appreciate you tuning in. I'm Alexander from theplayersaid.com.
And I'm Grant. All right. I'm going to take one more big picture of the board. Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was very, very, very good. Very well done. Good job, Chad and John. Well, I'm glad I played it.